morning and welcome to LibraryCon. We are excited to welcome to the booth today Fabrice Sapolsky and Kristal Adams of FairSquare Graphics. And we're going to learn a little bit about them, about the company, and dive into some of the titles that they have available on Comics Plus. Kristal and Fabrice, we are glad to have you here. Let's start with Kristal. What's your background with comics prior to FairSquare? And then Fabrice, and then we'll talk a little bit about the birth of FairSquare and what you guys are all about.
Yes. So prior to FairSquare, I had very little exposure to comics. And I actually have been holding firm to my identity as a newcomer and an outsider very proudly, because I think that there are a lot of people that are exactly in my position who have not been reached out to, who have not yet felt the love of comics, and they could be a part of the family. So it's been really exciting for me to connect with people who are in my similar position and get them reading comics, get them understanding the whole world, understanding the lingo, all of the shorthand that everybody who's been in this thing for a long time has been using, that they don't realize can, make somebody feel like an outsider. They don't mean to, but it's just kind of the nature of the beast. And so yeah, since I've been a part of FairSquare, I have been developing my own taste, developing my own even style as now a comic book author, and very, very excited for a lot of the titles that we have, because I think that what we are doing is going to reach new and current generations of potential comic book readers.
Cool. All right, Fabrice.
All right. I have to top that. Well, I am a seasoned or veteran or old, depending on how you want to call it, comic book professional. I started my career as a comic book journalist, actually, in the late 90s, early 2000s. And then I switched to being a creator. My first work was for Marvel Comics. Then I quickly realized that there were a number of issues with how creators' rights were being handled and how creators were being handled. And it took me a few years going through different companies. I worked with Image, Dynamite, Humanoids, Heavy Metal. I worked with a lot of different companies over the years. But always with that idea that at one point, I would have to answer that question, which is how do we make the system better and the food chain better for creators? And FairSquare Graphics, which started at FairSquare Comics and we became FairSquare Graphics this year, is one answer to that question. This is our answer as a small, very dedicated publisher where we put the human before the business. That doesn't mean that we neglect the business, absolutely not, but that means that we can show that human side as we are publishing our books. And that defined a system where we have different colors that are associated with our relationship with brands and how sometimes we act as a publishing partners to other creators, and sometimes we are the main creative force. And that created this very eclectic catalog that we have now of over 45 titles that we've published in the past 5 years, where we try to be a mini mainstream that has one very particular thing and feature, is that we're the only family, immigrant, and minority-owned publisher of graphic novels in America.
Oh, all right. And your tagline, comics from the rest of us. I love that. You kind of position yourself as publishers and curators of graphic novels by immigrants, minorities, LGBTQ plus, and disabled authors, and notably for the widest possible audience. And it sounds like that your reference to mini mainstream, kind of, you're not trying to pigeonhole creators for their pigeonholed audiences. You want to introduce these voices to the broadest audience as possible. So talk a little bit about that first year of, at that point, FairSquare Comics. Like, what was that process like, and what were your first couple of titles, and what did you learn early on about what it would take to achieve that mission?
I don't know, you want to talk about the Kickstarter?
First, Well, the first year, I don't think we really intended to make the company what it is. What happened was we, made the company just as a vehicle for some of Fabrice's properties, intellectual property. And then George Floyd was
Happened.
killed. And this actually caused a lot of people to ask themselves questions. And so one of the questions that Fabrice asked himself and a lot of his friends was, how do I do anything at all that is moving the ball in the right direction? And we were fortunate that a friend said, you do what you do, but do it in a way that helps the Black community. And
Shout out to TC Harris.
yes.
Absolutely.
And that started the idea of doing something that he is very good at, which is not just making comic books, but also I think the noir genre. He became kind of known for that, and then turning that into a whole world where it's all noir stories by Black creators, and that was the start of Noir is the New Black, which now went from 16 to now 18 short stories, all by Black creators, all in the genre of noir. And it's been really lovely to see how people respond to the book, just hearing about what it is, looking at the pages, and also a lot of people discovering the noir genre. I think that's for me, like on my end, I, as a newcomer, as an outsider, it's been great to explain to people this word is not just the French word for Black. It is a whole world of storytelling technique, and how cool it is to see it being done, but all from Black creators and in, sequential art form.
And also, I want to say, it was not just an experiment or a way to do things right as a good ally. It was also, it was basically creating the blueprint for what the company would become, and how every time we were approaching a creator, it was like, but you're going to keep 100% of what you created, which was very important to me. And I always tell creators, I said, like, look, I'm a creator too. I don't want anything. I don't want any chunk of what you created, because I have my own IPs. And so I want to be a partner to you, and you're going to be a partner to me, and we're going to move everybody up along the way. And that would be the system. And it became the blueprint. And so Noir is the New Black, we sold over 7,000 copies to date and keeps growing. It's still one of our bestsellers at every show, and it's the all-time bestseller of the company so far. It's a book that not just is standing on its own feet, if I may, but it's also spawned a whole collection of other books, Watson and Holmes, Little Rock Files, and we have more Noirs the New Black books in the pipeline right now for next year and the year after. So it's something that will always be at the company. Noir stories by Black creators, Noir the New Black.
Nice. All right. So you've also done, you also do some licensed translations. That's
We
a
do.
part of your, talk a
Yes.
little bit about that. How do you identify what makes a FairSquare Graphics title that isn't an original publication for you?
Very
That
good
is
question.
the best question, and not enough people ask us this question.
Pat myself
And
on the back.
yes, you should, because I think usually when people meet us, a lot of times it's at a comic convention. We do almost 30 a year, right? And so we're meeting people for the first time, and a lot of times people are meeting individual creators. We're in Artist Alley, and obviously we are creators, but they are coming up to our booth, and they're also meeting a publisher. And we do try to give a little bit of the essence of like what it is that, who we are and how we pick the book. But I do wish more people ask that question, simply for the simple fact of, we are doing something that is, I think, pretty unique, and trying to stand out. And we don't have the massive amount of funding that a lot of the bigger companies, some even the smaller companies, have to be able to get in front of people's eyes. So anyway, but to get to that, you wanted to take us
Yeah,
first?
well, I wanted to say that precisely to continue
Yeah.
your train of thought. We need every book to be a hit because precisely we're very limited. We're publishing 12 to 15 titles a year, which is a lot for us because we're just this operation. Like, this is FairSquare Graphics. I mean, there's Ethan, my son, who's there, but like he's more of a silent partner. But this is us. This is the company. So we have to wear all the hats, and there's so much that we can do and so much that we can finance. And so we have to be very careful. And so when we're picking a title, the first question that we ask is two things. Is one, can we see ourselves pitching the book to people with the same amount of passion as one of our own books? And the second thing is, how can this book advance the general agenda, as in the society? Because we feel like graphic novels and comics have a function. They're a way of expressing views. They're a way of opening doors, a way of opening eyes, a way of peeking at a situation that you may never heard of. And our strategy is always, okay, right now, I think everyone would agree that horror is a big thing and everyone does horror. And we don't have a horror book. I mean, we have a thriller book that is horror-leaning called Meshuggah that just came out. But apart from that, we are not trying to follow trends. We are just trying to be ourselves and offer the books that we would love to read.
Yeah, and also, and big one, and something that we often tell people, is emotion.
Yeah.
Does it move us? So that is a big thing. It's like when we hear the subject matter, when we see the art, when we're reading it, do we feel moved? Do we feel like a shift inside of us? A term that I have really appreciated being coined years ago is the term graphic medicine. And even though all of our books don't all have a component of like specifically addressing either mental or physical health needs or even emotional needs, I think really almost all of our books can really go under that rubric because I can find so many ways, you know, where we have books that deal with intense grief, right? There are, and not just for adults, but children, you know, children are dealing with really tough things. And if we're only giving them books where there's a happy ending and animals, like that's not how allowing them to process the full scope of the world that they live in and the one that they will continue to live in.
Yeah.
And then we also have books about that are dealing specifically with mental health. I think we stand out right now because we have a pretty good parity with fictional books, but also a lot of graphic memoirs right now. And this is my favorite thing for newcomers to comic books, or people who said, I have a hard time, you know, staying on the pages and like looking at the art. I just want to get to the end. I will almost always recommend a graphic memoir because I find that, you know, that part of the brain that's saying this is for kids, it's easier to turn that off when you're reading a real person's story that you know if this actually happened to this person. Yeah.
No, I mean, yeah, it's just like, and we also, as you said earlier, which is very important to us, we don't try to cater to a certain audience. We don't try to cater to a certain community. We really believe that comics are for everyone. And even this old debate of our graphic novel comics, our comics graphic novels, for us, it's exactly the same. I always say to people, graphic novels are just thicker comics.
Yeah.
So you can call them the way you want. It's just comics to us.
Yeah.
And it's very important that people get that because and everywhere in the world, as long as there are panels or even not panels and dialogue, but let's say the action moves on a page in a sequential way, you can call that comics. And it's fine by me, whether you have one panel, 2 panels, 12 panels, no panels. And it's not important. The important thing is the emotion. I don't know who said that, but it was not me, who said that if you read one of graphic novels from any creators, and you don't feel anything, that means that the writers and the editors don't have done a good job. And it's important to remember that comics are a vehicle for passion and emotion, and it has to be visible at first sight. We take a huge pride in when people come and say, we love the designs of your cover, it's very enticing, we want to take them, we want to look at them, we want to flip through pages, this is a showstopper. And not just because I'm a graphic designer by trade, I worked as a graphic designer and art director for 20 plus years, but it also is a testament to the amount of work that you don't see but has an impact on you.
Cool. So to the graphic medicine connection, that's a big category for us in general. One that we, as far as our like collection development policy, that's an area that we're really interested in. And the school side of that, social emotional learning, which you kind of alluded to from a kid's perspective, that is a huge category in schools. So anybody listening, if those are two areas that you're intrigued by or looking for more titles, dig into FairSquare. So let's segue into, let's talk about some of your key titles. It can be, let's do a mix of backlist, talk about some titles you've got coming up. One clarification I'll make for those who don't necessarily, not everybody understands how Kickstarter works, and I know you guys use Kickstarter for some funding. Just note if you're talking about any of those titles, when the what the timeline expectation for that is, because most of our audience today is going to be librarians in public and school libraries and colleges. So access to content from Kickstarter efforts tends to be a little more challenging than the eventual release for the trade.
Yeah. So you want to talk about some of the books?
I want to talk about some of the books. Yes.
Okay.
I want to talk about, first I want to talk about the book that we don't have at the moment, but has been a constant seller and an instant hit, and especially with librarians, called A Fox in My Brain. It's a book that we anticipated that this book would be a success, but not as fast. The book went sold out in a month, and we overprinted. And so it took us so much by surprise that it took us a minute to understand how we were going to reprint it fast enough so that we could be here for the holidays. But the good news is it's coming back. It is now at the distributor, and it's going to be back in stock next week. So people who want to order A Fox in My Brain by Lulu B, they can do it. This is one of the books that people resonate with because of its nature.
And it's been getting a lot of positive reviews from even like therapists and like physicians, like people with degrees in this, talking about how good a job it does at explaining this, not only this specific type of bipolarity, but all the types of bipolarity in a way that I think is really accessible for people to understand. And it feels it's connected because it's her real life journey to understanding her own bipolarity. And I do want to say one thing I love about this book. I mean, sometimes it does immediately appeal to children, and not all the themes are going to be okay for every child, because it does deal with the concept of suicide, and that being a part of people that are dealing with mental health, that being a regular part of their life. But I will say I love giving this book and recommending this book to adults. And I also just in general love encouraging adults who are coming in, who are just looking for books for their kids, because I think they don't realize when they are only giving their kids graphic novels or comics, they're sending an unintended message that this thing that I'm giving you is only for kids. And I put that out there only as like, I'm hoping, every librarian is also encouraging every adult that comes in looking for graphic novels for their kids, letting them know they need to read them too, because otherwise that sets them up for a world that makes them think that the thing that they're into is frivolous, and it's not. It's for everybody. So.
That's a good point.
So A Fox in My Brain, it had a story review in Library Journal and in Publishers Weekly, and it was really like everyone loves this book. So I can confirm it's there now. It's back in print. The other one that we love to talk about because it's also a showstopper is A Boy Named Rose, which is a book that has been nominated for an Eisner this year and a Harvey also award. And it's this amazing gender fluid story about finding your space in a society that doesn't even know how to qualify you. And not only the art is amazing, it's like all animated influence, but it also has a big heart. It's a book with a big heart. And despite the fact that it's kind of thick, it's like over 200 pages, it doesn't make any difference. It's still one of our bestsellers everywhere we go, all across the country, in every state.
Yeah. And I think to me, this is one of those books where even though it's fictional and even though it doesn't necessarily touch on issues of mental health, it does feel like it qualifies for graphic medicine, because I can't tell you the amount of times I've been emotional, just even pitching this book to people, because I can sense that there is a way that they are receiving even just the existence of the book as a validity to their personhood.
Right. Now, there's something to be said that representation is a form of medicine. So that makes
Yes.
sense to me.
Speaking of representation, I want to talk about this book that is also very popular with librarians and everywhere we go. It's called I Run to Make My Heart Beat. And it is a slice of life. It is a graphic memoir. And it's exactly what Kristal was saying about how to match someone else's history with your own. And it echoes when you read that. It will bring memories. You will understand that if you have issues, if you have confidence issues, if you have like trust issues, if you have like societal issues, racism issues, you will find in there other people who have been going through that too. And that will probably help you understanding that you are not alone.
And the way that I like to pitch this book, especially for, people who identify as Black, who, they come up to my table, I let them know that this is an inspiring book about a real Black person that is not in the civil rights period, because that is usually where they like to keep us.
Yeah.
When it comes to graphic memoirs. And so this is a really lovely and inspiring story showing that, people that have multiple identities like this woman, in particular being Black, she's actually Black, Jewish, and Muslim, they are doing inspiring things outside of the civil rights movement.
Great. That's great.
I Run to Make My Heart Beat, like also very, very good. And it just got 2 Juice Awards last night, which are the awards for publications and graphic novels with the Jewish theme. So we're also very proud of that.
Nice.
I want to talk about our little new baby. I wasn't mentioning it earlier, Meshuggah. And as I said, it's horror leaning, but it again is a book about identity and a book about survival with a very strong female lead. At a time where it takes place in 1905, it was not easy being a woman with a purpose and with a job to do. And so you see a lot of those misogynistic remarks from other men, but she still carries on and she solves a mystery that has been there for a while and no one really had the courage to tackle. So it's also an inspirational book, despite the fact that it's fiction. And it also another take on being from a culture and trying to move as far from it as you can, and realizing that in the eyes of somebody, you're always going to be that person.
Yeah. And also, I would say it has a very prescient message too about how important it is that we actually care for people who are not being cared for, because in this book, there is a group of people who nobody cares that bad things are happening to them, and nobody's doing anything about it. The authorities are not doing anything about what's going wrong in this particular town. And it really takes this one person to make people start caring again. And I think that in itself, you know, and in spite of the fact that it's horror and people like horror, I think people are connecting with that on a more deeper level, because you can tell, like, when you read a book that we pitch you as horror, we didn't just try to find a horror book just to get it in there. It means something.
Another one that is kind of like surprising for us because we didn't really expect to venture in those pastures. It's The Three Musketeers, the manga version, which is the first volume out of 2. And it also kicks off our collection of manfra. The manfra are mangas that have been created by French creators. And so, of course, we started with this one because it was legit. The Three Musketeers is a French book initially, so it takes place in France. And so having a manfra with the Three Musketeers made complete sense. It's really a smart, fun, and new take on a classic. And it's a book we're very proud of. The first volume is available now. The second volume comes out in January. And yeah, I really think that people will really like it. We also give it like production values that are our values. Like it has soft touch, it has good paper in it. It's a book that will not be destroyed after 2 or 3 readings in a library. So we're very proud of that. And it kind of is the teaser for the 3 or 4 other manfra or manga or Spanish manga that we have now that we're going to publish starting in 2025. The second one, sorry, being one that, of course, we don't have right now because it's still in production, called The Red Flower. And Red Flower is a manfra based on African legends from a creator, writer, artist, creator who is of Ghanaian descent. So.
Are these straight adaptations? Are they reimaginings? Which direction are you going?
Red Flower is an original story that is based on African legends.
Got it. And Three Musketeers, is that a
And
straight
Three Musketeers,
retelling?
of course, that it's a new take on the classic. So yes,
Okay.
it's an adaptation, but a new version.
Gotcha. Okay.
Yeah, we also
The
have
manga
another book.
classics kind of does really well with the kind of traditional retellings in manga format.
Right.
And those are
Right.
particularly
We also have
popular with
another
us in
book that we're
schools.
very, very proud of called Legend of Hakutaku that comes out in March, which has a lead that is a young girl that is deaf and that speaks sign languages and saves her village because she's the only one that can hear demons and talk to them.
Oh, okay. Cool. So I'm going to pull one up we talked about Kickstarter. So Kristal, you kind of set the stage of not originally a comics person. You're kind of the newcomer to the industry to some degree, but you're also now a comics writer. Talk a little bit about that experience and the comic that you're writing.
So when I started tabling with Fabrice at Comic-Cons, we at some point decided to make this character named Mutiny. We decided to make her our mascot for the company. And it's a beautiful Black woman that was drawn by, originally it was Chris Cross.
Originally it was Chris Cross.
Yes. So an incredible artist. He did it for our magazine that we had called Mutiny. We put her on the banner. And at our table, one of the things that happens, and we knew it would happen, but it is still very exciting that people come up to our table because of who they see that we are immediately. It's kind of like an automatic filter for who is getting to see and hear about our books, because the people that see who we are naturally drawn to us and vice versa. But that being said, that beautiful woman on the black on our banner also draws people to our table as well. And over time, we just kept getting so many people being disappointed that she didn't have a story. And so we made an attempt to actually get the story going. There was another writer attached to it, and then she was not able to do it due to her schedule. And so it was like, okay, well, either I write the story or we don't have this story, or I have to face the disappointed faces each time we're at a Comic-Con, we don't have her story. So I basically, when I tell people that I wrote my first comic, I tell them that I got bullied into writing my first comic book. And, happy to do it, but definitely was bullied. But it has been this, it's reignited even more passion for me over going after I feel like there's like a lot of like lost girls and boys who were just not brought into the fold in the comics world. Like they think they don't like comics. They think that they don't, they can't really follow along, but it really is just that they've not been brought fully into the fold. So in addition to writing a story that is exciting and that is a blend of things that I love, like one of my favorite movies is, I love Labyrinth and The Wiz and Star Wars, and like all of those things I feel like are influences that I infused into this book that I am now writing. But alongside of that, and because of the Kickstarter, I realized I have two problems. I have to not only convince people of this story, and that the story is worth their time and worth their money. I also have to do some PR for comics to the people that have this very negative or limited picture of what it is. And so anyway, I've been very excited to really reignite people's excitement over something that they thought was not for them for a really long time. And I've been doing it online and I've been doing it in person. It's of course way easier for me to do in person. I sold out of my comic book every single time we were at the table, just because between the conversation, them actually looking at the comic, just like flipping through the pages and chuckling, it's like, it's done. Like, of course they're going to get this comic, and, of course they want it signed. It, for some reason, is still just a harder sale when I'm not in person with them. And so I've been trying to do some, just basically public relations for comics to let people know it's not what you thought it was. And unfortunately, for years, a lot of comics were not being written for everybody. Like, they were written for everybody, but it's not covering everything that you might be interested in. And so now we have those things, but they don't know about it because they still think comics are just superheroes, or they just think it's just like all for kids or boys, And I'm just so excited to be part of, I think, a wave of people who are letting people know this is a much bigger world than you think it is. And let's go back and get that inner child and give them everything that their mom told them they couldn't have, and they are the comics that are made for us, for our age. So
The funny thing is that if you look at our catalog, and whether it's conscious or not conscious, the majority of our books are carried by female leads. And like, whether it's in our two main flagships, which are Mutiny, Black Girl Magic, which is Kristal's title, or Intertwined, which is one of my titles, have strong female characters in them, and there's no other way we wanted it to happen. It feels such a natural thing for us. Like, I lost my father when I was very young, so I grew up with a bunch of very strong women, strong-willed women, and these are my superheroes. So it's no surprise that when we're choosing books, we're also looking at that.
Cool. So, I mean, really, and it's kind of come through in a few different things you've said. Your mission with comics is kind of similar to librarians who understand there's two kinds of librarians. There's the ones who understand there's a demand for comics and try and figure out a way to meet that. And then there are the comics librarians who themselves value comics and understand that there are people who think comics aren't for them and they just haven't been given the right comic. So, our belief with Comics Plus is, giving people broader access to comics that they may have never heard of is to your point, Kristal, put that comic in their hand, walk them through it. That's going to be a much faster conversion than, the more ambient they're hearing about comics in the news, or, they follow somebody on Twitter who talks about comics.
Yes.
So let's talk a little bit about, for you guys, where do schools and libraries fit? And particularly, you mentioned the first book that was out of print for a little bit as you did a second printing. Where do digital comics fit for you guys in your overall mission?
That's a very good question, Guy.
Well,
We
you're
have
about to
been-
go off on the digital part, right?
Yes.
But in the
Let me
press
answer
release
the first
announcing you
part,
guys, he very
because he could-
famously said, like, I don't really
Yes,
care about
he has a lot to say about the digital part, but let me answer.
Well,
the
he
first-
knows that.
let me answer the first question. I think the place that libraries and librarians fit in that is I really, really love what I've seen a lot of librarians doing, because they are becoming the new curators of comics. I think if there's somebody that people are going to trust to start their first graphic novel journey, it's going to be a librarian. It's not going to be somebody on TikTok. It's not going to be somebody on it's not even going to be me. It's going to be them. And so it's really exciting to me, the librarians that have really taken this on as their mission, to let people know not only are comic books, but that they are for everybody. And so anytime, honestly, truth be told, I'm telling you a little secret. We can tell when you're at our table. We know you're a librarian before you tell us you're a librarian, because of which books you start looking at. We're like, okay, we know. But we also know we're going to have a good conversation, because we know that you're actually taking in what we're doing for what it is, as opposed to just like, this is casual, like a lot of people come to our table and it's a harder sell, or we have to kind of have more of an on-ramp to a conversation. No, with a librarian, it's straight to the point, and we love that. So I would say that hopefully that answers your question, that's how it fits in. I mean, we love librarians and libraries.
And we went to ALA this year for the first time ever.
Yeah.
And we had an amazing experience. We didn't know what to expect, because we're a small publisher. We were in Artist Alley. We didn't know if it would fit. We didn't know like what would be the reaction, because when people come to our table, they don't expect anything. And then the same magic happens with librarians that happens with the rest of the people, which is like, we have some books, people like stop, take them in their hands and say, okay, I want that. And this is extremely encouraging for us. And we got out of ALA thinking, okay, we're doing something right here, because librarians, like, they're vibing with us. They like the books. They want to see more. They want to hear more. They're giving their business cards left and right. It's really encouraging. And like, I can't stress enough how important librarians are. Every time they discover us, we can have a conversation. And it's easy, because contrary to other companies, there's no velvet rope, there's no distance, it's just us. So you want to talk to the publisher, you talk to Kristal, you talk to me, that's it. You're there. We're very accessible. You can call us. Our phone number is on the website. You can text or call us, text us, call us, of course, email. And it's extremely important that we keep that channel open for people like librarians.
Now you can talk about digital comics.
All right, so thank you very much. My relationship with digital has always been very complicated, because in a lot of ways, it feels to me that digital comics don't reflect the value of the comics themselves. And when I started the conversations about joining Library Pass with Moni, shout out to Moni Barrett, I told her, I don't like digital comics, because when people buy a comic book for $1.99 or $3, it's not reflecting the value of what the creators have put in it. And even if there's 1 million views, we're going to make pennies on the dollar. So for creators are always at the bottom of the food chain, and it's the opposite of what we believe should be right at FairSquare Graphics. But I said to her, I said, like, but I will make an exception for Library Pass, because I believe that it's an important key to discovering our content through libraries, because libraries are safe. They're safe for us, they're safe for the audience, they're safe for everybody. And that's the only exception we made to the rule of no digital. And people are very disappointed, like, oh, you're not available on the digital platforms. No, we're not, because most of the money goes to the platform. It never goes to us. It never goes to the creators. And so, but on Library Pass, it's very different. It's like, you know, a public, you know, mission.
Yeah. It's equity.
Equity.
Yeah.
Yes. Thank you.
And I would also say, I mean, just for people who don't know,
Public service.
I mean, to that point, you have an opportunity, at least with us, that for the time being, we are not on any other digital platform besides Comics Plus. So we are exclusive digitally to you. That's the only way and we tell people at our table, if they ask for any digital comics, we actually point them to Library Pass.
Except except for the Kickstarter. But incidentally, you were talking about Kickstarter earlier. Our Kickstarter program and our book program are completely separate. Like, what we put on Kickstarter are series that you will not see in stores, like in stores as comics, like single issues. We don't do that. We don't publish single issues. So when you see single issues on Kickstarter, there's very little chances that you will see single issues at your local comic shop. We will not do that. We will wait until we have a collection that is thick enough so that we can release a graphic novel.
Yeah, but none of these books that we presented today, like these ones, like none of the books that we have, the actual physical books, are any other place digitally besides Library Pass.
Well, we appreciate that. And, you know, fundamentally, that is our pitch to publishers is, you know, we don't go out telling publishers, hey, give us your books, you're going to make millions of dollars. It's give us your books and help libraries in the discovery process. Libraries who have supported comics for a long time, but have the same challenges as anybody else when it comes to physical access. And we've heard more and more from libraries about the equitable aspect of a large collection, that it's not just, you know, certain publishers who will remain unnamed. Those are the only books you can easily get, and everybody else you have to kind of scramble and figure out your budget. So we appreciate that the support of our mutual mission. Glad to be exclusive. I'd love to be able to say, hey, you guys should go get FairSquare wherever you can find them. But for as long as they're only available digitally here on Comics Plus, librarians, you know, check them out. And one thing we hear anecdotally, I wish we could measure this more effectively, is libraries do discover digitally titles that then eventually get added to their physical collection. Because they literally discovered them. They weren't aware that they existed, you know, sometimes because of distribution challenges, sometimes there's just a lot of comics out there. Circulation activity on our platform, we know, has led to acquisitions of physical editions, which we don't sell, so there's no benefit to us there, but we think that is a great part of that process. And Fabrice, overall, personally, I say this very rarely publicly, I actually don't like digital comics personally. I'm still a very physical. You can see the shelves behind me. It took a long time to fully, like, I understood the value of discovery when we first started, you know, launched this, but it took me 2 years to really fully buy into, hey, just because the format doesn't work for me, I started discovering things that then I went out and bought, or, you know, let's be fair, sometimes things I'm glad I didn't go out and buy. That's part of the discovery process, you know? So, yeah, so we're happy to have you guys with us. We appreciate the support of the mission. We continue to look forward to what else you've got coming out in the future. So thank you for joining us. Any last words before we sign off?
yes, get ready for the return of Intertwined in a few weeks. It has been one of the first books that it's the first book that I created when I moved to the United States. So it has a lot of important value because it's a story of an immigrant that comes to New York, and I happen to live in New York and I'm an immigrant. But it's also a way for people to experience the series in its entirety, because it's 300 pages and it's going to be this thick volume that we're extremely proud of. So yes, get ready for Intertwine.
And one final thing, I just want to share this because I think it's something, I think I may have stumbled into something that might be very helpful. And I'm sure so many librarians can give me advice on this as well. But I just found in talking to a lot of specifically like adult Black women who felt like they were not, that comics weren't for them. A lot of what they pushed back with was comments about like, it's hard for them. They just want to keep, rushing and reading to the end. It's hard for them to stay on the pages. And I think that what has happened is that for so long, our education system has really prioritized speed and amount of books read. And there's so many of us, not just Black women, who have really been coached out of we don't have the ability to slow down and play with a page. And so if that is if that is their hang up, is that they want to keep rushing, they want to move on, you can introduce a comic as a therapy for their brain to slow down.
Yeah, and especially anthologies, because even if you have a short attention span, a 6-page story, that's what we tell. We have this book called Beyond Topia Legends, which is also very popular at shows. And these are 12 stories by Indonesian creators. And these are like 8 to 10 pages story. And it's easy to go through. You stop, you take it back, you stop, you take it back. And you can do it digitally too. So it's never a problem.
I like that. I'm gonna actually, my wife cannot wrap her head around comics. So I'm gonna use that as the hey,
Anthologies.
slow down.
Yeah.
Cool. So let's wrap up. Where can people find you? Website, social? What are your preferred means of contact?
Yeah, so we're FairSquareGraphics.com is our website. We also have social media everywhere. It's FairSquare Graphics everywhere. And you can also follow us personally. Fabrice Sapolsky. You can find him on social media. I'm everywhere on social media. You can type in my name, but I'm also under the dark Kristal everywhere. So
nice. All right. And here in the booth, you'll find some information about their catalog. We've got a spreadsheet with some specific titles and ISBNs. So for that, wholesaler print order, drop them right into your wholesaler's cart, and you can get those books added to your physical collection as well. Again, enjoy them here on Comics Plus, and thank you all for joining us, and we will see you at LibraryCon. Thank you.
thank you.